Welcome to episode, or I should say, hour number 2 here at Fantasy and Frames for our Fantasy and Frames Wednesday lineup. Welcome to Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast here on the Fantasy and Frames Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. Got JT with me as always, and we're welcoming, an old member of the family back to the show. We're welcoming Mike Wohlert from the IDP show. Mr. Green Dot himself, one of the legends in the IDP space, just a great guy overall. And it's great to have you back talking some IDP with you, Mike. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. Coming from Charleston tonight. And like I said, I'm a little out of my comfort zone, so I'm going to try to do what I can here. I got a couple of screens, but definitely not my normal setup. So I will do my best tonight.
Sounds like a plan. No, my wife is always like, we got to go to Charleston. And I'm like, what is the big allure of Charleston? That city is a pretty city. It's a very beautiful city from what I've been seeing.
I mean, if you're a history buff, it's a must. It's not like Europe where things are from like the 1200s, but I mean, you're walking on things from like the 1600s, 1700s. And then, you just realize, okay, I'm walking on where the Civil War took place. I'm walking on where pirates are. Plus the food is fantastic. So it's a good walking city, and there's carriage rides, there's ghost tours, there's haunted ghost tours, food, breweries, everything. If you can't find anything to do, then that's a you thing. But it's a good place to spend, 3-4 days. And I'd recommend going in the spring, probably like April-ish, May-ish, because once you hit June, July, August, one, you're entering hurricane season, and two, the heat and the humidity can be just unbearable. By 10 o'clock, it's like 90 degrees and 100% humidity. But like if you were to go in like April or May, it's just nice. It's like 75, 80, and just really nice.
All right. Well, I've added it to the calendar for next year. Hopefully during my wife's spring break at school, she'll be able to go. But no, I love it. Love it. I always like to go to these cities. Like Savannah is another city that I think would also.
Savannah's a good city. My son goes to school there. So, I mean, another really good walking city, very historical, beautiful. So lots to do. A little bit, not as big as Charleston, but it's still a really nice city. Tons to do.
Did you know that the park where they filmed Forrest Gump, I don't know if you've ever been on one of the tours there.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
They had to stop traffic because traffic was supposed to go counterclockwise, but they made it go clockwise just for that day. That's more of me nerding out.
And I think some scenes from either Outer Banks or Stranger Things were filmed here. So, Charleston and Savannah are very scenic and very film worthy.
All right. Love it. All right. JT, how are you doing this evening, sir?
Doing all right. Drafting away, man. Drafts everywhere, all day, every day. I feel like we talked about it a little bit in the last hour as a commissioner trying to get these drafts set up. Obviously, everything being online is easier these days, but a lot of my home leagues, I try to do in-person drafts, so those weekends are starting to fill quickly throughout the summer, so trying to get those done. And then I got a couple auction drafts that we do, free agent auctions. I like to do them all at one time in like a 2 or 3 hour span. I just feel like it's quick and hits easy. I'm in an auction right now. It's a startup, and I'm at this point, I'm like, I don't know if we're going to be done by the start of the season. It's slow rolling. I think we've only had like 10 or 11 players in 2 weeks actually come off the board because it like resets when people keep bidding. So I'm like, I really would just like to knock out 2 or 3 hours and hammer out. No, I got a guy. Great. I got him or I didn't get him and go to the next guy. So trying to work out everyone's schedule is a pain, but we'll figure it out. We'll get it done.
Very nice. All right, folks. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about, IDPs that were drafted in 2021, 2022, 2023, doing some comparisons to their most recent year, 2024, and looking at basically these young players in the NFL who, from an IDP perspective, from a fantasy perspective, from football perspective, however you want to look at it, have they exceeded our expectations? Have they, met our expectations? Are they below our expectations? And we'll just kind of like go around the frames and just give us, our our takes and our arguments of like what we think as far as, where to value these guys, especially like in Dynasty. Not so, and I guess from a redraft perspective as well, but I think mostly from just like a long-term, quote unquote, asset production. So let's get this thing kicked off. And I mentioned his name before we went on the air, and I was going to save this as a juicy nugget, but F it, let's just go right into it. Let's talk about Mr. 2022 himself, undrafted free agent by the Chicago Bears now. Basically in line to be the LB1 for the Dallas Cowboys, although if DeMarvion Overshawn would not blow out his in every single way possible, I would make the argument that he should be. That's neither here nor there. In 2022, in his big year in fantasy, just came out of nowhere, was the PFF LB6 overall. If we wanted to use Fantasy Pro scoring, he was averaging 10.4 points per game. Let's talk about Jack Sanborn. Mike, you put out various tweets on X talking about Jack Sanborn and how his upside is really up there in Dallas just because of the pathway to snaps is high. Maybe if you could just give us give the viewers some information about Jack Sanborn.
Well, with Sanborn, it's not it was never a talent thing. He just got unfortunately buried behind two big free agents. Bears spent $1 gazillion on two off-ball linebackers in free agency, and Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards have just dominated the snap share, especially with the Bears playing so much nickel. I mean, they were based maybe 30% of the game, 30% of the game for the last couple of years. But his rookie year, I mean, he had a 19% tackle rate, and it's like, boy, if we could get him a full-time role, I mean, obviously he's not going to have a 90% tackle rate, but I mean, if you give him, 800, 900 snaps, maybe a 14 to 15%, that's big numbers. But going to Dallas, I like the spot when he went to Dallas. Even when they traded for Kenneth Murray, I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. And then I think even with Overshawn, I think Overshawn's return, I think, would be bad for Murray, not necessarily Sanborn, especially if Sanborn gets the dot, which I think he got in that quick OTA. I'm kind of scouting some of the things that are going on in minicamp. So if he's got familiarity with Eberflus's defense anyway, and he's already gotten praise for his leadership and for his communication. So out of the linebackers, I'm drafting Sanborn first, well ahead of Murray. And I wouldn't say he's disappointed or exceeded, but it's just the path to snaps hasn't been there, and now I think it's definitely opened up thanks to Eberflus.
JT, what are your thoughts here on Jack Sanborn? Because I know you have a lot of friends who are very big on Sanborn, and we talked about him a few times here on Shoot the Gap.
Oh, I've got a bunch of friends that are Bears fans, and they were livid about Sanborn not being on the team anymore. They love Sanborn. I got a buddy, Mike Sutherland. He's like, Sanborn's his favorite player. He has him in every IDP league. He's like, I'll never get rid of him. I don't care if he dies. He's on my team. Yeah. He loves him. Yeah. He's so upset that the Bears lost him, but he is one of those guys. He's super pumped about him being on the Cowboys and the opportunity he's going to get here. I think Mike hit it perfectly. I mean, just got stuck on as the third linebacker on a team that doesn't play a lot of three linebacker sets. I think Sanborn, I tell you what, I've been searching waiver wires in every IDP league I'm in. I'm like, if he's out there, I'm going to go get him for a lot of money. He's nowhere. I can't find him. Everybody's kept him. Everybody's held on to him. And I think that says something about him as a player. Even when he hasn't been getting playing time, he hasn't seen a lot of snaps, people still like him as a player and think he could be productive. And the fact that not a lot of people have dropped him, a lot of people have held on to him. So I actually think he is, I would think he was one of the, more underrated guys coming this year, but Mike, especially pushing him hard. I think people are like starting to jump on board hard on Sanborn and think he could have a huge year. And I think he could. I think he could have a really big year. So it's one of those things. He went from like one of the worst spots to one of the best spots as far as like just getting playing time. And then obviously it always helps when you have some familiarity with the coaching staff that's coming in. I mean, they're going to go, what I want, what we need. And I thought this Cowboys linebacker group was, with Overshawn hurt, was one of the worst linebacker groups in the league. if you're just talking about off ball linebackers, not counting Micah Parsons as a linebacker or anything like that. And so I thought Sanborn, I think it's a great spot for him. I love it.
Mike, were you going to say something?
I thought so, but it's gone.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know. I don't know where it went. I was going to. Yeah, it's gone. My brain it's gone.
Okay, well, if it comes back from the ether, feel free to jump in at any point,
Yeah.
regardless who we're talking about. All right, let's get to another linebacker here. That JT, you and I, we've talked about the situation in Jacksonville here, and I'm not talking about everyone's favorite linebacker who hasn't seen playing time. We'll get to him in a second. We talked about Devin Lloyd, and you made an argument a couple weeks ago that they may be paving the way to get rid of both Devin Lloyd and Trayvon Walker, at a certain point in Jacksonville, and just kind of bring in some new blood there. But we look back to Devin Lloyd's rookie year, 2022 first-round picks, 27 overall, just abysmal per PFF metrics. You look at 2023, okay, now you're seeing a bump up in production and tackles and tackle efficiency production. His missed tackle rate was still in double digits. You didn't like that. Had his best season last year. High tackle volume, low missed tackle rate. Again, if you want to use Fantasy Pro scoring, was in the top 10 or top 15 in Fantasy Pro scoring. So, the trend is getting upwards. I want to say if the expectation was in a first round selection, he being somebody who is super stellar, and that should have come out the gates tackling everything in sight and just been, some tackle machine hashtag, that goes out to Mario Davis, my favorite hashtag tackle machine, but that's not here nor there. If we go out to, him being the superstar, I want to say as of 2024, he has now finally met expectations. If we're not counting his rookie year, I think he's far exceeded expectations. JT, let's start with you this time. Where do you land with Devin Lloyd here?
I've always kind of been a Devin Lloyd hater. I've never really liked him. I didn't like the first when they took him in the first round. I was like a little surprised by it. But I have to tell you, I've had to eat it a little bit the last season or so. I mean, he is actually starting to become a lot better than I thought he was. He was definitely below expectations for me, but like when you start looking through the numbers and how he's played, he was pretty good last year, which it hurts for me to say it because I'm a Chad Muma guy. I love Chad Muma. I can't believe he's a little bit like a Sanborn, never could make his way into the lineup because he just kind of got stuck behind two other guys. He's another guy I would love to see him on another team and get a Jack Sanborn-like opportunity for someone else because I do think he's very good. But Lloyd is definitely one of those guys I would have said if you had asked me this 2 years ago, I'm like, man, this guy's going to be a disappointment forever. I'm eating my words now because he's actually been pretty good. And it's hard for me to make that mental adjustment because I just never thought he was very good. But, man, the numbers don't lie. He was pretty freaking good last year.
Mike, what are your thoughts on Devin Lloyd here coming off of his best year as a pro and for fantasy?
Yeah, I think he's definitely met expectations, I think. I don't know what Nielsen was doing with Lloyd last year. He kind of was tinkering around with both him and Ventrell Miller, but still played all 16 games, another 100 tackle season, added a couple of sacks. So he added some big plays, four defended passes, forced fumble, and 7 tackles for loss. So I am huge on Lloyd this year. Just something about the defense that the Campanile is gonna install. It's an aggressive defense. He focuses on the run defense and pursuit, which Lloyd has averaged an 87.3 run defensive grade over the last two seasons. And I just think he's a good, quick attack the hole and get the tackle linebacker. So I think he's going to utilize his speed. He's pretty athletic. I'm not going to say he's Edrin Cooper, but I have a feeling he's going to use him like Edrin Cooper last year. So multiple areas, maybe even use as a pass rusher, maybe more coverage snaps and zone drops. So I think, with Campanile running more of a nickel, I think he's going to be on the field quite a bit. I think they're still going to use 2 linebackers. So I've projected Lloyd to, I think in my projections using Big Three and some of the other scoring, I think he's settled in as my top 10, one of my, a top 10 projected linebackers. So take that for what it's worth. I'm either going to be dancing in the streets or I'm going to be eating a lot of crow with Devin Lloyd this year, I think. And in fast draft, I think I've got about a 30% share with Devin Lloyd. So I am hoping for some big things with Lloyd in what is basically a contract year, because his fifth year wasn't picked up. So he's got a lot to prove. And I was like, it's always those intangibles when you have those linebackers or the defensive players in a contract year with something to prove and hopefully getting some maybe some big money next year. So I'm all on board. And I think when I break down my linebacker tiers, I probably have him in my second tier after the, kind of those, I guess you can call them the big four off-ball linebackers. But no, I'm all on board with the Lloyd train and Campanelle's defense.
Nice. And you brought up a good thing right there, talking about the Fast Draft app. Finally, great seeing some IDP best ball action on the mainstream. And again, folks, if you haven't already, it's a fantastic app. If you're over in Canada, they just recently made it available there. Available in many states here in the United States. Fun game. You go to their D-Up game. That is where you can play and select your IDPs. Strictly IDP only. These are fast drafts, 6 rounds, 20-second timer. And some people might say, "Oh, 20 seconds is not a lot of time." Me, I've always been in leagues. Here's the thing. I've been in leagues for my longest running leagues, I should say. The timers were always 30 seconds. And so, then since I've been picking up more and more leagues, going into industry leagues, going into other leagues, it's either been a slow draft or it's been like a minute timer. And I'm just like, this is giving me too much time, because now I'm like double thinking everything, every decision I'm making. Whereas a 30-second, you're just like, or a 20-second draft, you're just like, boom, boom, boom. Here I'm going with this. And there's something like you get a rush out of that, so to speak. So the Fast Draft app for IDP playing their D-Up game, super tons of fun.
And you're done in like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's great.
Done in 5 minutes, done. And you basically have a top 60. And, every team is, for the most part, kind of loaded. But, you rank your players, 20 seconds, do a quick search, have your players ranked, draft, literally done in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and their IDP scoring setup there, I think is pretty cool as far as the points allowed per play. Just a lot of fun there. And folks, if you use the promo code FRAMES when you sign up, you'll get a first-time deposit match of up to $50 in credits. It's really a lot of stuff, a lot of great stuff over there. So kudos to all the guys over there at Fast Draft app. And again, download them, use the promo code FRAMES for the first-time deposit up to $50 in credits. And with that, let's get into another linebacker here. And I promise it will not be all linebackers this conversation, but let's get into the last one here. And this was a debated player for us last year, Mike, because on one hand, fantasy production, when given the opportunity, was there. Tackle production was definitely there, but man, he just got passed around like he was at a Willie Nelson smokeout session in 2024, and I'm talking about Ernest Jones. He's in Los Angeles. He was behind Bobby Wagner, and then all of a sudden he had a lot of great production. Then last year he gets traded to the Titans, and then he's with Kenneth Murray, but then he was still doing really well as an off-ball linebacker with the Titans, and then he gets traded to the Seattle Seahawks, and then he still managed to have a decent season with again, going, if we're using fantasy points as a metric, which obviously there are other metrics to go off of, but he was still getting you double-digit fantasy points if you're using a scoring setting like Fantasy Pros. And I know there are a lot of fantasy scoring settings out there, so I try not to get too much in the weeds as far as like ranking people based off of just fantasy point production. But at the end of the day, I think the Seahawks also gave Ernest Jones an extension of some kind this offseason, if memory serves me correctly. So obviously
3 years, $33 million.
Yeah, so obviously Seattle sees something. But again, it's the passing around. Like they're like, the buck stops here. You're not going anywhere. We're keeping you here. You had the couple game emergence of Tyrese Knight, and now going to be a second-year player there for the Seahawks. Is this a situation, Mike, where he was drafted when he got the initial opportunity, but then got traded away to Tennessee and then he got traded to Seattle? Is he like an automatic, like exceeds expectations because just of the circumstances he's been dealing with, he's still managed to produce? Or has he not really lived up to the expectation because he hasn't stayed, like, for example, in a defense like the Rams, where it's basically one linebacker, off-ball linebacker, and you're having all the opportunity there?
No, I mean, he's exceeded expectations for me. I mean, third round pick. That first year, I think he only played, rookie year played 440 snaps. Then second year, 2022, I think is when Wagner came in, still managed, over 700 snaps, 67% and 114 tackles. And then has really been a pretty steady producer since becoming a full-time guy. Calls the plays. He's the leader of the defense. 138 tackles last season between two teams. So elite production. For a third round pick, I'd definitely say he's exceeded expectations. I guess my only concern is a cleanup knee surgery just kind of came out of nowhere. And then his agent's trying to spin it like, yeah, no, it's a good thing. It's fine. It's no problem. And it's like, okay, well, it's still a knee surgery. So
Right.
hopefully it's cleaned up, kind of a long-term thing. And maybe that's why the Rams moved on, or maybe they just didn't want to pay Jones what maybe he was expecting. But obviously they're still in pretty good shape from the front of the defense, but from a linebacker standpoint, I think they've had some trouble kind of replacing him. I think they did a good job with this offseason, with the additions of Chris Paul and Sean Dolak. I think they've done a good job of replacing him. But as far as from an IDP standpoint, I mean, he's been an elite guy. You can make an argument for three seasons, definitely 2 seasons since becoming a full-time guy. Grades have been but when you're the only guy, you don't really need to worry about being pulled off the field. So,
Right.
and if you're calling the plays, then again, don't really need to be worried taken off the field. So, I think he's still one of the top linebackers heading into 25, but I'd say he's exceeded expectations. Third round pick. So, I'd say he's exceeded.
What about you, JT? What are your thoughts here on Ernest Jones?
Yeah, he feels like the cook of defensive players. It's like he goes to every team. He keeps getting traded, but he keeps like performing no matter where he's at. The cooks is like, but I like Jones. I'm not sure why he keeps getting moved, but the numbers are solid. I think he's way over expectations for what people probably have expected from him. And he just keeps being good, keeps being solid. So I like him. I still think, the value is there. I don't think he's one of those guys like you just have to pay through the nose to get him. Even though I think the production's been there. So I really like Ernest Jones. And like Mike said, I think he's way exceeded expectations of what people would expect for a 3-year guy, and especially a guy that's been moved as many times as he's been moved. For him to continue to keep performing everywhere he goes is, that's just a great sign.
And he's still young. I mean, he's going to be 26 by the end of the season, so still relatively young. So I don't necessarily say you have to sell him. I mean, I don't get some of this fascination with like, okay, after 2 elite years, I'm going to trade this guy for draft picks. I'm like, okay, why? I mean, I get why, but like, I don't know, enjoy the elite production and
exactly.
Don't necessarily. Why are you going to
don't overthink it, right? Don't overthink it.
I could draft an Ernest Jones type in next year's draft. It's like, yeah, but you already have him now. Why would you? Why would you do that?
Right.
Like, I think some of these dynasty players would be like, yeah, Luke Kuechly's really great, but I'm going to trade him after his 2nd or 3rd year and just sell high on him. And it's like, I don't know. Some of these guys just ride or die with him. Just enjoy the production. Don't overthink and selling these picks for picks.
And that's not. It's another thing where it's like, or you could have 2 really good linebackers if you just kept your draft pick that you were going to, trade away to begin with.
it's the Family Guy. It's like, yeah, I get a boat, but it's a mystery box. It could be anything. It could be another boat. It could be another boat. It's like, yeah, but I have a boat. I have a boat. Yeah, but it's a mystery box. Who knows what you're. So I don't like subscribing to
that is one of my favorite memes too, because it's like so true. You're like, but if I trade this guy for all these draft picks, I could maybe get that guy back. And you're like, just keep
him.
Like what? Just keep. Well, I could get a stud line. You have a stud linebacker. Why are you trading him away to possibly get another one? Yeah, it's like the perfect example. Like that's right on.
All right, enough talking from me. Let's get Mike. Tell us about some players that you are thinking about in terms of exceeding, meeting, or not meeting expectations the past 3 years.
So, a guy that has disappointed me. I think he was in the. I want to say he was the 23 draft class. I'm totally off of him, and I think most people should be too if they're not already. And that's Lucas Van Ness. I mean, overdraft. I think obviously now overdrafted. Can't generate consistent pressure. Just no production whatsoever. So, they drafted Sorrell, I think, in the 4th round, who I think is who's going to be a spark plug, I think. And I think even almost Brenton Cox is better than Lucas Van Ness right now. And I just. For a 14th overall pick, he's just done absolutely nothing. So he's a guy that is definitely a big disappointment.
JT, Lucas Van Ness, Green Bay Packer. What are your thoughts here?
Absolutely. I mean, he's a guy never started in college, but he had decent production for when he played. So everybody kind of thought like, oh, he's young, he's big. If you just get him on NFL stage, like he's gonna take that production from college and he's just gonna run with it. Well, it hasn't happened. And you kind of see why he never started in college. It's like he feels like a guy that was way overdrafted at this point, going as high as he did. And for fantasy purposes, if you've got him, you're just like holding him, hoping that you're going to get something out of him because there's no value there. You can't get anything from him. He's a roster clogger at this point. If you got him, it's because you spent too much on him and you're holding him and hoping that something happens eventually with him. Because like it's not been pretty, it really hasn't. And you'd hope to see like some of these guys go like, okay, he was super young as a rookie, so some of these guys are like, okay, it's going to take a couple years, and then you will start really seeing it. I feel like I don't hear anything about him anywhere, like no chatter, no talk, even in real he just seems like a guy, and that's ended up being a bad draft pick. I don't want him. He's moving down I was looking at my IDP ranks the other day. I'm like, I know he's young. He's a high draft pick, but like, God, I don't even know if I should have this guy ranked at all. Like that. I mean, it's been very disappointing.
No, absolutely, guys. JT, who's the guy that you are going to be talking about as far as meeting, exceeding, or not meeting expectations?
I got a guy that is kind of almost all three. It's kind of weird. It's kind of strange when you talk about him. But Trayvon Walker from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's a guy that went number 1, so anytime you go there, the expectations are going to be through the roof, right? Everyone's like, oh, you're going to be said. But he was a weird one that he went number 1 and everyone was like, oh, I'm not sure he should have gone number 1. And I'm not sure how good he is. So it's like a weird situation where expectations should be high because he went number 1, but then there was a ton of low expectations. I don't know where he went in your guys' IDP drafts as a rookie. He plummeted in mine for a guy that went 101 in the real draft. Like I got him in like the late 3rd and the early 4th in a really high scoring IDP league where usually the top IDP guys go like late 1st to early 2nd, the top guys off the board. I mean, you're looking at like an Abdul Carter this year is going to probably go like top 5 or 6 in this draft. Like I got him in like the late 3rd in this league a couple years ago. The expectations were not there for a guy that was the 101. It was shocking to me. And if you look at his career, obviously super young player, people forget dude, this guy was 20 as a rookie. He's just turned 24. Like the guy's 24 years old. So he's still young. But if you look at his career, when he came in, obviously high expectations, everybody knew he was a guy that was going to need to grow and get some time. Only 3 sacks as a rookie, obviously disappointing, but most people didn't think it was going to come. Here's where I think he doesn't get the credit. He's got 3 straight 10-sack seasons.
Mm-hmm.
3 straight 10-sack seasons. Now, has he had a 15 or 18-sack season? No. So we're not getting like that elite production. But we've got 3 in a row for a guy that's 24 years old. He's still got room to grow. I still think he's got by far his better days ahead of him. And he's shown consistency. He hasn't had a million tackles, but that's not really who he is. But last year, 61 tackles combined, solo and assist, 13 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles, fumble recovery. Nice. Year before, he was in, 52, I think, with 10 tackles for a loss. So he has put up silently, I think, with very little fanfare, solid numbers for a guy that was super high expectations being the number 1 pick, but has been really pretty good. And I still think for IDP purposes is a little underrated. I still think you can get him for a reasonable price. I don't think people are talking about him enough, especially for Dynasty with his age. Guy's still only 24. Got a lot of good years ahead of him. So Trayvon Walker is a guy, for how much I've not liked Devin Lloyd for the Jags over the years, even though he's gotten better, I think Trayvon Walker has been underrated a lot for a guy. Hard to say for a guy that was a former number 1 pick, but I do like Trayvon Walker a lot.
What are your thoughts about that, Trayvon Walker, Mike?
I have him actually as exceeded expectations just because when you see, he was not even close to the number 1 consensus pick. I do think it was Aiden Hutchinson, if I'm not mistaken. I think everybody was taken aback when Walker was taken number 1. When you look at his production, I think according to PFF, didn't go over 5 sacks in a given season, didn't have a pressure rate. Pressure rate had never hit a 10% pressure rate, yet alone an elite pressure rate when you're talking 14, 15%. So I'd say almost he's exceeded my expectations. He's not someone I actively search out for in a draft. But I'm not overlooking him anymore. But if I'm able to get him as like a DL 4 or 5, I'd be happy. I'd be fine with that. But I just think he's probably going to go a little earlier than that. But yeah, no, he's, like I said, I think he's definitely exceeded my expectations. 20 sacks last 2 years. And it does look like the, kind of that production has kind of caught up. 158 career pressures, 23 quarterback hits. He had 56 pressures on 555 pass rush snaps. So, got a little bit over 10%, but sometimes that efficiency is going to come down the more you play.
Right.
But for really having those, I guess those expectations, I think, like I said, I think he's exceeded.
Love it. All right, Mike, give us another player that people should be thinking about from exceeding expectations, meeting them, or not living up to.
Probably going to stay in that class. I think as of right now, I think Nick Benito has exceeded the expectations. Crowded edge rush room in Denver. I know they got rid of Browning, but now totally dominated last year, and I think now he's looking for a pretty huge contract. But I think if I'm, remember his stats, I think he had at least a 15 or 16% pressure rate. I know the win rate was in the 20% range. I think he had 15 sacks, 16 sacks, or something insane. And not necessarily a full-time role either.
Yeah, so, he had 13. Yeah, he had 13 last year in a part-time role. But he cranked it to end of the year. I mean, he was like sack every week, like gold to end the season.
Yeah, so high motor guy, and I probably look for him to have more of a full-time role this year, and just on a dominant defensive line. Zach Allen, Benito, and a pretty solid linebacker group now with Greenlaw and Alex Singleton back.
No, I love that. And
This was absolutely Jorge. Sorry to jump in. This was
Yeah.
absolutely the next guy I was going to talk about. I was going to bring up Benito. He was like literally on my list. I had him pulled up. I think he's exceeded expectations. You know, former second round pick. You didn't quite know how he fit in. We've seen this Broncos defense. This Broncos defense might be elite this season. I mean, they could be elite. Now that he is a full-time starter, they've kind of made room for him. We've seen what he's done. 13 sacks last year, 8 sacks in 2023, his second year after only one as a rookie because he didn't play hardly at all for a year. I mean, that's 21 sacks in the last 2 years for a guy that was basically a part-time guy. I mean, that's crazy. Now you put him full-time, you play on time, and it's not like he's the only guy. They got Cooper on their side. I mean, like I said, the linebackers have improved. The interior D line is guys that can rush the passer too, so they're not just run stuffers. You can't just look at Benito and go be like, oh, okay, well, we're just going to double team him. With who? Who are you going to? How can you double team him with this defense? You can't. You can't. So I think last year was a breakout year for him. I think he can easily hit those numbers, if not exceed them this year. And we saw the athleticism last year, man. He, 4 passes defensed. He made plays all over the place. He was a guy like just wreaking havoc. And then the secondary, which is good, just got better. They got J.J. Barron and into it. Riley Moss is coming back from injury. Brandon Jones, obviously, Surtain with defense player. I mean, this is a loaded Broncos defense.
Yeah, Jonathan Cooper too on the opposite side.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a loaded defense. I love Benito. I still think, even with how well he played last year, I still get a feeling that he is a little bit slept on in the IDP community. You would think people would be like just all over this guy. I'm looking at other people's rankings and he seems low to me for a young guy that just had an explosive season. If you expect regression, maybe you say that, but I don't expect regression. 25 years old, played at Oklahoma, was a stud at Oklahoma. I think, if you could still get him, you got to go get Benito. You got to. I think he's got a lot of really good years ahead of him on a just great defense.
So I was looking up something right now just about Nick Benito's performance. So when you look at, and you mentioned Jonathan Cooper being on the other side, let's not forget Baron Browning and Benito were splitting snaps for a good chunk of the season last year until Browning got traded to the Arizona Cardinals. Keeping that in mind, Cooper, he was not splitting snaps. He was the primary guy there. When we talk about quarterback hits as a metric, Jonathan Cooper, who had been the incumbent all 17 games, number one starter, 20 quarterback hits. Benito splitting time with Baron Browning, and then after Browning left, 24. That's crazy. Like, played almost half the time, but then still exceeded that metric. When we talk about sacks, similar trend. Cooper, 11 sacks, and then Benito splitting time with Baron Browning, yet for the season was able to total 14 sacks. And of course, stats being brought to you by fantasydata.com. It is mind-boggling just how well he has produced. And I think you guys are spot on. He is definitely an exceed expectations type of player here. JT, who's another guy that we should be thinking about here in terms of exceeding, meeting, or not meeting expectations?
A guy that I think is like really kind of on the edge when you look at what he's done, where he was drafted, late first round pick by the Buffalo Bills, Greg Rousseau. I mean, he's been solid. Has he been fantastic? No, but he's been pretty good. So I think he, the last couple seasons for him, you're looking at 8 sacks, last year, 5 the year before that, 8 in 2022, his sophomore season. So a guy that's been pretty good. He's got decent tackle for a guy that's a defensive end. Again, another guy came out real young. He's 25 years old, came out as a 20-year-old going into his 5th year. I think this Bills team is reworking themselves on defense, but I think he's going to be a core of this defense. I think you see that floor of 8 sacks is pretty solid. I think he's a guy that actually has double-digit capabilities. He just hasn't gotten there yet. But I like him. He's a guy. He's not going to overwhelm you. You're not going to be like, oh man, he just saved me. But he's a guy that you can just plug and play at the end every week in IDP. I just think he's solid. I don't think he's like been way above expectations. I don't think he's been below as a late first round pick. I think he's been right where you kind of needed him. He's been obviously the 5 sacks 2 years ago were a little bit like, I wish he had a couple more, but we know how sacks are. Sometimes you can still have a good pressure rate. You can still get in there and just not get home. But we've seen he's already got 8 sacks 2 of the last 3 years. I think he can be in that 8 to 10 sacks, for the next 3-4 years. I think that's right where he can be at. So I really like him. I said I would say he's met expectations there. And to me, again, not a sexy name, not a guy that everyone's out there trying to grab, but a guy that, like, when you have him on your team, you feel solid. You feel good about putting him in the lineup every week. You're like, oh, okay, I can count on him probably having a solid game for me. So he's a guy that I just feel like, name recognition. People know who he is. No one's, overly trying to acquire him or do anything crazy. But he's a guy, when I have him on my team in IDP, I feel good about it.
So whenever I see somebody go like, he's not really up high, but he's not really there, he's right in the middle, I think of Jim Zorn for the Commanders, because he's like, you got to keep it level. You can't be too low here, can't be too low there. You got to keep it right there in the middle, keep it level. So Gregory Rousseau, according to JT, keeps it level at D end for IDP. Mike, would you concur with all that, or do you have anything to push back on potentially?
No, I think I had him actually, like you said, like you had Nick Bonito, JT. I had Russo as one of my Met expectations. Career high in tackles last year. Buffalo was still implementing a little bit more of a rotation, but he still saw a healthy amount of snaps. 13% pass, 13% pressure rate, a nearly 20% win rate on on true pass sets. Which means, you throw away like the throwaways, play action, check downs. But according to PFF, 17 quarterback hits. So when you look at some of the all 22, or when you look at it, when you see 17 quarterback hits, that means for me, he was maybe a millisecond away from another sack, or the quarterback just got the ball out. So he could have easily had double-digit sacks last year in his breakout year. So for me, I mean, I'm again I might be higher than some of the consensus on Russo as far as my projections go. I mean, I've got him as, I think, the DL7. When it comes to my projections, I've got him probably reaching right around double-digit sacks this year. So with Von Miller gone, that's a couple hundred vacant snaps that have opened up, and I don't see why you wouldn't want to give him more. Just let him just get after the quarterback.
Love it. And if you look at it, for tackle for loss leagues, that you get pretty nice point total. He's got 38 tackles for a loss.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in the last 3 years, 38 tackles. That's, I mean, if I'm getting a guy double-digit tackles for loss and he's getting close to double-digit sacks, I'm really liking that. I mean, last year, the 8 sacks, but he added 16 tackle for a loss on top of that. Yep. So, like Mike said, he's a guy that's getting pressure. He's getting into the backfield. He's making moves. He just has not necessarily gotten home as much as we'd like, but he's right there.
Yep.
All right, Mike, let us talk about one more player before we get out of here on Shoot the Gap. Who do you got for us to talk about right now?
So I'm going to go with disappointed, and I'm going to say Kwity Paye. Probably a guy I'm probably going to be selling off here if I can. I think another guy that came out of Michigan, I think maybe a little bit too much hype, but I don't think he's got a double-digit sack season yet. Plus, I think the Colts have spent relatively significant draft capital over the last couple of years on the edge rusher position, especially with Laiatu Latu. I want to say the 2025 draft is a blur to me. I thought they spent a pretty high pick on an edge rusher. If I'm not, oh no, they got JT Malu, or I just totally butchered.
Yeah, they
his
took
name,
him in
but
the second. Yeah, they took him in
yeah,
the
and
second
they
round.
took
They've
him in
gone-
the second round.
The Colts have
so
gone
they're-
first, second round edge pretty
Yeah.
much 3 or 4 years in a row. They've
So
been taking edge rushers.
Yeah, so I think that kind of tells you what they think on Kwity Paye without really saying it. So I think if you can sell them off, I think probably now might be the time to do it, I think. But yeah, Kwity Paye has definitely been a little bit of a disappointment, just a moderate pressure rate. And just has not even met expectations of a first round pick. So yet alone exceeded. So definitely disappointed from my vantage point.
You're right there, JT.
Yeah, as a Colts fan, Kwity, I liked Kwity coming in. I had huge expectations from him. He's been disappointing. I mean, the Colts run a rotation, and so that always knocks your numbers a little bit as a edge rusher. He's been much better against the run than he has been in the past. So he's been good for real life purposes against the run, but man, fantasy, he's just disappointed. He's just not got you the numbers you wanted. I have him on a ton of teams. I was taking him everywhere. I really was. And as a Colts fan, but I think every Colts fan I know is like, man, I like Kwity. I want to like him more, but he's just not been that good. He just really hasn't. Again, he's been more of the run stuffer DN. He's just not a guy that puts pressure on the QB. He doesn't win off the ball. He's tough. He's almost one of those guys. He's like a better squeeze edge where it's like, hey, squeeze it down, hold the corner, make sure no one gets outside you. He's much better as one of those guys than he is actual pass rusher. And that's just not the way the NFL's played these days. Like people, if you're on the edge, they want you to bring the heat, and he just doesn't. It's tough, man. I think he'll be gone. And I think the fact that the Colts keep drafting edge rushers every year high just tells you that they're preparing to move on from him sooner rather than later.
And on that Debbie Downer note, we are going to wrap up Shoot the Gap here this week. Before we get out of here, though, Mike, seriously, thank you very much for coming on and joining us. It's always a pleasure talking.
Absolutely.
To you. Are you going to be in Canton for the expo this year?
I am going to try. I don't know. I don't think I'll be doing the Kings Classic this year, but if you'll have me, I'm definitely on board, definitely down with the IDP panel again, of course. So if you'll have me there, I'll definitely be in Canton for that.
Yep. It goes without saying, you're always a needed and definitely respected member of the IDP panel. So yes, absolutely. Tell the people where they can find you and where they can find your work.
Yeah, you can find most of my work at the IDP show, where we have our draft kit where you can find all my breakouts, fades, sleepers, projections. I also have my own Substack running. So if you just go to mikewohlert.substack.com, I've got kind of my own thing going. Whatever I don't write or whatever thoughts come up, I just kind of put out there on the IDP or on my own personal Substack. So just dropped a pretty big article on Jared Verse, why I think he's in for a breakout season. You can find some of my sleepers for rookies, my top 75 IDP rookie rankings. And then over at the IDP show, like I said, find some of the redraft, and all of my other rookie content is out as well. So training camp's going to be here before you know it, and we're just churning it out.
Dude, that's awesome. Like I said, folks, Mike is one of the legends in the IDP community, Mr. Green Dot himself. You just do such great work, and it shows just how passionate you are about IDP, and definitely a role model for all us IDP content creators out there. So thank you very much for joining us. JT, any parting words for IDP purposes you want to shout out to the people?
Yeah, Mike. Great to have Mike. If you don't follow him on the X. I always follow him. Get some good tidbits in there all the time. Just updated my rankings, and I'm continue to tweak them here a couple times a week as I get more time, an hour here, an hour there. You can find those all over at DLF, my top 150. I also got my top 25 rookies. So in case you're looking for Dynasty draft, like looking where to take rookies, I've got my top 25 there. I also have a couple articles. If you want to go back, search my name, IDP Justin Taylor on DLF. I've got a couple mock drafts where I've broken down just IDP, but I also did a mock draft where offensive and defensive players combined, where you can maybe draft guys where you can find them, where you can expect to take them depending on your league. So I always get those kind of questions. So go search those on DLF if you get a chance.
And my redraft, first iteration of redraft rankings just went live at fantasyandframes.com, as well as you can check out my IDP Dynasty rankings. We got a we have a IDP 101 article series coming out. And then, of course, we're doing our IDP Dynasty Risers and Fallers series kicking off very shortly. So again, all three great websites, all three great resources, all three people who are very passionate about IDP fantasy football. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Mike, thanks again. JT, as always, it's a pleasure. Stay tuned, folks, for Fourth and Frames who are watching over on the Fantasy and Frames channels. We'll be talking about our wide receivers 1 through 12 for early redraft rankings. So for Mike, for JT, I'm Jorge. We'll see you all next time.